Tom stepped off the dusty bus with a small bag in his hand. The road behind him stretched into the forest, quiet and empty. Ahead, the village of Hollow Creek waited under a gray sky. Old houses leaned into the wind, and a thin mist moved between, the trees like it had a purpose. He pulled his coat tight and walked down the narrow path. Birds were silent. Even the wind seemed to whisper instead of howl. This was a forgotten place, just as he expected. A place where people spoke in half-truths and left questions unanswered. Tom was not a tourist. He was a historian, the kind who chased strange stories. His last project had brought him here after he found a sealed letter hidden inside a century-old book. The letter was written by someone named Helen Ellington. It spoke of children who never grew older. It begged whoever found it to come, to uncover the truth. He had read hundreds of strange tales before, but this one felt different. It felt unfinished. The village was small, maybe 30 houses, a school, a bakery, a chapel, and a post office that looked like it hadn't changed since the war. People stared at Tom as he passed, not in a rude way, but with the kind of stare that said, "You shouldn't be here." Tom checked into a small inn owned by an old man named Harris. The room was simple, one bed, one window, no television. Harris looked at him with curious eyes when he signed the guest book. "You're not from here," Harris said. Tom smiled politely. "Just doing some research. I'm looking into the history of this place." Harris paused. "There's not much history worth digging up." "I'm interested in the Ellington family," Tom said. The room went quiet. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to slow. Harris placed the pen down carefully. "That house is cursed," he said. "Best stay away from it." Tom didn't argue. He just thanked him and went upstairs. But that night, as he stared out the window, he could see the top of the old Ellington mansion far beyond the trees. Its roof pointed like a crooked finger toward the sky. It stood taller than anything else, proud and forgotten. The next morning, Tom walked to the town library. It was run by a kind woman named May. She was the only one who didn't seem afraid to talk about the past. "Ellingtons?" she said, flipping through a dusty folder. "They were wealthy. Moved here about 100 years ago. Big house. Adopted many children." Tom leaned closer. "Did they have any of their own?" "No," May said. "But they always had children in the house, some from the city, some from war-torn areas, some were orphans. They always adopted." She handed Tom an old newspaper. There was a photo of the Ellingtons in front of their house. Mr. and Mrs. Ellington stood with 10 children. The headline read, "A House of Hope in Hollow Creek." Tom looked closer at the children. They were all smiling, but their eyes were strange. Not scared, but not joyful either. The oddest part was their clothes. It was a picture from 1950, but some children looked like they were dressed from 1920. "Did they ever leave town?" Tom asked. "No," May said, "and none of the children ever seemed to grow older." Tom froze. "What do you mean?" May looked out the window before answering. "I mean what I said. The children always looked the same faces, year after year. I was a child when I first saw them. They looked 10 years old. I saw them again when I was 30. Still looked 10. Tom sat back in his chair, unsure what to think. "Didn't anyone report it?" "People talked," May said. "But the Ellingtons were generous. They donated to the school, helped the poor, paid for roads. Most people looked the other way." He left the library with a dozen copies of old records. Back in his room, he placed them on the floor and looked at them carefully. Names repeated: Sam, Lucy, Noah, Grace. Different adoption years. Same children. It wasn't possible. But the papers didn't lie. That evening, Tom walked the road leading to the mansion. It was overgrown and hidden behind thick trees, but he found it. The house, stood still and silent. Its tall black fence was rusty. The windows were shut, but one on the second floor had a curtain pulled aside. Tom looked up. A girl stood there, no older than 10. Her face was pale and still. She watched him without blinking. Tom took a step closer. The girl vanished behind the curtain. He waited, heart beating fast, but no one else appeared. Later that night, he returned to the village. At the inn, Harris stood waiting. "You went up there, didn't you?" he asked. Tom didn't lie. "I saw someone in the window." Harris said nothing for a long time. Then he spoke softly. "They're still in that house, those children. Some say they never left. Some say they don't know how." Tom asked, "Are they ghosts?" "No," Harris said. "Worse than ghosts. Ghosts are memories. Those children are something else." The next morning, Tom woke early. He couldn't sleep well after what he saw. The girl in the window stayed in his mind, her pale face, her quiet stare. She didn't look like a ghost. She looked real, too real, like someone waiting. Tom packed his notebook and walked back toward the Ellington mansion. The fog was thicker today. The trees stood still. Even the birds refused to sing. He followed the old road until the iron gates appeared through the mist. The mansion was silent. No sound came from inside. The window stared down like eyes. One window had the curtain slightly open, but there was no girl today. Tom circled the fence and found a part where the iron had rusted and broken. He stepped over carefully. The garden was wild. Vines climbed the walls. Statues stood half buried in moss. The air smelled of old earth and faded flowers. He stopped near a fountain that no longer worked. There, hidden behind a bush, was a narrow stone path. It led around the back of the mansion. He followed it. At the end of the path, he found a door. It looked newer than the rest of the house. Less dust, less rot. He pushed it open slowly. The door creaked, but did not resist. Inside was darkness and the smell of forgotten years. He turned on his flashlight. The hallway was clean. Not perfect, but not abandoned either. Paintings lined the walls. Most were of children. Some smiled, some did not. Their eyes followed him. He stepped into a large living room. The furniture was covered with white sheets. Dust floated in the air. A grand piano stood in the corner. Its keys were yellow with age. Then he heard something. Laughter. Soft. Distant. Like it came from upstairs. Tom froze. The laugh came again. Then a voice. "Don't go up there," the voice whispered. Tom turned, but no one was there. His flashlight flicked for a second. When it came back, the hallway behind him seemed darker. He moved toward the stairs, slow and careful. Each step creaked. The higher he climbed, the colder the air became. At the top, he saw a hallway lined with doors. Children's drawings were pinned to the walls. Some looked fresh. One showed a house with many children standing outside. Above them were strange black shapes like tall shadows. Tom reached the third door and pushed it open. Inside was a child's room. Toys from different decades were neatly placed on shelves. A rocking chair moved slightly. The window was open, and the wind moved the curtain. Then he heard a voice behind him. "You're not one of us." Tom turned fast. A boy stood in the doorway. He looked around 10. Brown hair, gray sweater, bare feet. His face was calm, but his eyes were deep, like he had lived many lives. "I'm just here to learn," Tom said. The boy stepped into the room. "Why now?" he asked. Tom didn't answer. He was trying to stay calm. Another voice came from the hallway. "He's looking for the past." A girl entered the room. It was the same girl from the window. She looked the same as before. Pale face, dark hair, no smile. One by one, more children appeared. Some stood in the hall. Some stepped into the room. All were quiet. All looked around the same age. Tom felt a strange pressure in the air. Not heavy, not painful, just strange. "I read about you," he said. "The town says you never aged." The boy nodded. "We stopped growing long ago." "Why?" Tom asked. "How is that possible?" The girl sat on the floor. "We were given something. A gift, maybe. A curse, maybe. It keeps us here." Tom moved closer. "Did the Ellingtons do this to you?" "They wanted to help," said another boy. "They thought they were saving us." Tom looked around. "Where are they now?" The children fell silent. Then the girl spoke again. "They went to sleep. Long ago. They didn't want to watch us stay the boy." Same. Tom wanted to ask more, but the room suddenly felt colder. The children looked toward the hallway. "They're coming back," the boy said. "Who?" Tom asked. "The ones who started it all." Before Tom could ask anything more, the children turned and walked away. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows of the hallway. Their footsteps made no sound. Tom stood alone in the room. The air warmed again. The rocking chair stopped moving. The window closed on its own. He took out his notebook and wrote everything he saw, everything he heard. But some part of him still didn't believe it. He walked back downstairs. As he reached the living room, he noticed something new, a portrait on the wall. He had not seen it before. It showed Mr. and Mrs. Ellington standing behind their children, but their faces were blurry, as if the paint refused to hold their image. Tom left the house through the same back door. The wind had picked up. The trees whispered as he passed. He looked back once more. The window on the second floor was open again. The girl stood there. This time she waved. Tom returned to the village before sunset. His steps were heavy and his mind was full. The mansion was not empty. The children were real, or at least they seemed real. They looked human, but there was something strange in their voices and faces. They didn't act like normal children. They moved calmly, spoke softly, and never laughed like others their age. Back at the inn, Tom wrote everything he could remember. The drawings, the voices, the way the girl looked at him from the window. He wrote down the names he had seen in the old adoption files. Sam, Lucy, Noah, Grace. Now those names had voices and faces. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he read through the old records again. The adoption papers had strange patterns. The same names appeared every 20 years. No birth dates were listed. No details about their parents. Just the signatures of Mr. and Mrs. Ellington. Always the same handwriting. Always perfect. In the morning, Tom made a decision. He would return to the mansion and try to talk to the children again. This time, he wanted answers. The sun was hidden behind clouds as he walked through the forest path. The air smelled of rain, though none had fallen yet. When he reached the mansion, the gate was open. The door at the back of the house was slightly ajar, like someone had been expecting him. Tom stepped inside. The air was still and cool. He moved through the living room and into the hallway. The house was quiet, but he felt he was not alone. He climbed the stairs slowly. On the second floor, the children were waiting. Sam stood in the hallway. He wore the same gray sweater, clean and neat. His hands were behind his back. Beside him was Lucy, holding a small wooden doll. "You came back," Sam said. "I need to understand," Tom replied. The children nodded and led him down the hall. They stopped in front of a large wooden door. Sam opened it. Inside was a room filled with books, toys, and drawings. It looked like a classroom and a playroom mixed together. The children sat on the floor. There were 10 of them. All looked around. 10 years old. Their clothes were different styles, like they came from different times. One boy wore old leather shoes. A girl had ribbons that looked handmade. Tom sat down on a wooden chair. "Where did you come from?" he asked. Lucy answered first. Different places. Some of us were sick. Some had no home. The Ellingtons brought us here. They said they would help us, said Noah, a boy with dark eyes and quiet hands. They told us we would never be alone again. Grace, the smallest of the group, pointed to a picture on the wall. It showed a younger Mr. and Mrs. Ellington holding hands with 3 children. The faces were faded, but Tom could see Grace's outline in the image. They gave us something, she said. A medicine. It made us feel better. But then we stopped, changing. Tom listened carefully. Sam stood and walked to a bookshelf. He pulled out a thick red book and handed it to Tom. This belonged to Mr. Ellington, he said. You should read it. Tom opened the book. It was a journal. Inside were notes, drawings, and strange symbols. The first pages spoke of a journey to another land, a hidden valley deep in the mountains. Mr. Ellington wrote about finding a strange flower with glowing blue petals. He took the flower back home and began studying it. Tom flipped through the pages. The notes became darker. Mr. Ellington had tested the plant on animals. The results were shocking. No aging, no pain. The body stopped growing, but stayed alive. Then he used it on his own child. The child stopped aging at 10 years old. At first, they were happy. But slowly, the child became quiet, emotionless. He stopped smiling. He stopped playing. He simply sat and watched. The Ellingtons thought maybe he was lonely. So they adopted more children and gave them the same treatment. Soon the house was full of perfect children who never aged. They wanted to save us, Lucy said. They wanted to give us peace. But something was lost, Sam added. We don't dream. We don't laugh the way we used to. We remember everything, but we forget how to feel it. Tom closed the book. Why stay in the house? He asked. We cannot leave, said Grace. The gift binds us here. The house keeps us alive. Tom stood. Do you want to stay forever? The children looked at one another. Some stayed quiet. Others looked unsure. Finally, Sam said, We don't know what happens if we leave. Some of us want to try. Some are afraid. Tom looked at them and saw the weight they carried. They had lived for decades, but were trapped in childhood. Their eyes held years. Their voices carried silence. He walked to the window and looked outside. The forest moved gently. The wind blew through the trees. Birds flew free. You're not ghosts, he said. But you're not living the way you should. Sam stepped beside him. We know. Tom turned. Then maybe it's time to change that. He left the mansion as the sun broke through the clouds. Behind him, the children stood at the window watching. They didn't wave. They just watched. But this time, their eyes looked different. They looked unsure. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit hopeful. Tom sat in the village library for hours. His hands were dusty from the red journal the children had given him. The writing inside was strange, but it gave him answers. Mr. Ellington had been a scientist, or maybe something more. The man had traveled across oceans, deep into hidden valleys, chasing stories of healing plants. And he had found one. A flower that glowed at night, with petals that pulsed like a heartbeat. The journal described everything. The tests, the excitement, the fear. The serum made from the flower did not just heal sickness, it stopped time for the body. Once taken, the person would stay the same forever. No age, no pain, no death. But it came with a price. The soul did not grow either. Tom flipped to the last pages. The words became shaky, as if Mr. Ellington had written them in a hurry. He wrote about regret, about how the children had become quiet, cold, and distant. They smiled less. They didn't laugh. They began to forget how to cry. He wrote that his own son, the first child to take the serum, would sit for hours without moving. just watching, like he was waiting for something that never came. Tom closed the book slowly. The sun was starting to set outside the library window. May, the kind librarian, walked over with a cup of tea. "You've been reading all day," she said. Tom nodded. "There's more to this place than I thought." May sat beside him. "The mansion still stands, doesn't it?" "Yes. And the children are still there. They're not ghosts. They're alive. But they haven't changed in decades." May looked down. "I saw them once many years ago. Same faces, same voices. I was young, but I remember. They never looked tired, never aged. I thought I dreamed it." "They're real," Tom said. "And they're trapped." May placed her hand on the journal. "If you plan to help them, be careful. Some things are not meant to last forever." That night, Tom returned to the mansion. The moon was bright and the air was still. The door opened before he touched it. Sam stood there waiting. "We read more of the journal," Sam said. "We remember what he wrote." Tom stepped inside. "You know what he did?" "Yes," Sam answered. "He wanted to keep us safe, but he kept us still instead." The children gathered in the living room. Grace held the red journal. Lucy had a music box in her hands. She turned the key, and a soft tune filled the room. It was slow and sad. Tom sat in the center of the room. "You were given something powerful, but it took your future away." Noah, quiet as always, nodded. "We are tired of being frozen." Tom looked at them carefully. "Then let me help. There must be a way to end it." "There is one place we never go," Lucy said. "The cellar. It is locked. Only Mr. Ellington had the key." Tom stood. "Show me." The children led him to a narrow hallway at the back of the house. At the end was a thick wooden door. It was covered in dust and sealed with chains. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key. "He left it in the piano," Sam said. "We never used it." Tom took the key, unlocked the chains, and slowly opened the door. Cold air rushed out. A stone staircase led down into darkness. The walls were lined with glass jars, books, and shelves filled with strange tools. At the center of the cellar stood a glass box. Inside was a small vial with blue liquid. It glowed faintly. "The last of the serum," Grace whispered. Tom stepped forward. There were notes beside the box. He picked them up. They were written by Mrs. Ellington. Her handwriting was neat but filled with sadness. She had written that this final vial must never be used, that the flower had since died, that the gift must not continue. Tom looked at the children. "If we destroy this, there will be no going back." Sam spoke with a steady voice. "Then it ends here." Tom picked up the vial. He could feel the EUA cold even through the glass. He walked to the old fireplace in the cellar and placed the vial inside. He lit a match and dropped it. The flame rose high for a moment. The blue light inside the vial flickered, then cracked. A soft hum filled the air, and the glowing liquid turned black. The air changed. Upstairs, the house groaned. The walls creaked. The lights flickered. Tom rushed back with the children. The paintings on the walls had aged. The colors faded. The furniture looked older. The house was changing. Grace held her head. "I feel heavy." Lucy sat down, breathing fast. "My heart, it hurts, but in a good way." Sam looked at his hands. "We're changing." Their faces were no longer perfect. Freckles appeared. Their hair moved slightly in the breeze. A tear rolled down Noah's cheek. "I haven't cried in years," he said softly. Tom led them outside. The night was still, but the stars looked brighter. The air smelled fresh. The wind touched their faces for the first time in decades. Some of them laughed, others cried. All of them looked at the sky like they had never seen it before. Tom turned to look at the mansion. The windows were dark. The house was no longer glowing from within. It looked quiet, peaceful. For the first time, it looked like a home from the past, not a place stuck in time. The children gathered around Tom. "What happens now?" Grace asked. Tom smiled gently. "Now you live." The days that followed were quiet. For the first time in many years, the Ellington children felt time pass. Sam woke up one morning with a sore leg. Lucy noticed her hair growing longer. Grace caught a cold and smiled when she felt warm under a blanket. Tom stayed in the village. He visited the mansion every day. The house had changed too. The walls no longer whispered. The air felt natural. Dust returned. The children cleaned the rooms, opened the windows, and even laughed during meals. They had found a new beginning. But deep down, Tom felt something strange, a feeling he couldn't explain, like the story was not over yet. One evening, dark clouds filled the sky. A cold wind blew across Hollow Creek. The villagers stayed indoors. Even the animals were quiet. Tom stood outside the mansion, staring at the forest. The trees were still, but the ground trembled lightly under his feet. He turned as Sam ran to him. "Something's coming," the boy said. "What do you mean?" "We feel it, all of us, inside, like a memory waking up." Tom followed Sam inside. The rest of the children were gathered in the living room. Lucy held her arms tight around herself. Noah stood at the window, staring into the night. "They're returning," Grace said. "The ones who gave the gift." Tom looked at her. "You mean the visitors?" Grace nodded. "We've seen them before, long ago, before we stopped feeling." That night, Tom stayed in the mansion. The children didn't sleep. They sat together, silent and alert. Just after midnight, a low sound filled the air, like humming from under the ground. Then, in the distance, a soft blue light appeared beyond the trees. It floated above the forest, moving slowly toward the village. The children stood and walked outside without speaking. Tom followed them. The air felt heavy, like before a storm, but there was no rain. In the open field past the village, the light came to a stop. A black object hovered above the grass. It was shaped like a long mirror, silent and smooth. The air around it shimmered. Then they came. Tall figures stepped out of the light. They had no faces, no mouths or eyes. Their skin was silver and soft, their bodies thin and long. They moved without sound. Tom counted 4 of them. The children stood still. Tom whispered, "Are you afraid?" "No," Sam said, "just remembering." The figures approached the children. One of them raised its hand. It did not touch, but a soft glow passed between them. The children closed their eyes. Tom felt pressure in his head. Then, without warning, his mind filled with images, not memories, but visions. He saw a valley full of glowing flowers. He saw Mr. Ellington kneeling before one of the tall beings, holding a broken compass. He saw the first child take the serum. Then he saw the children over the years, silent and still, while the world outside changed. The vision changed again. He saw the being standing before him now, offering the vial to Mr. Ellington. There had been no words, just a look, an agreement, not forced, chosen. Tom opened his eyes. He breathed deeply. The air felt lighter now. The tall beings stood quietly. Then, one by one, they turned to look at Tom. He didn't speak, but somehow he understood their message. The gift had a purpose. It was never meant to last forever. It was meant to save those on the edge of death. But it had been used too long. The balance had broken. Now that the children were free, the visitors had come to close the circle. Sam stepped forward. "We remember everything now. They came to help. but they cannot change what happened. Tom looked at the visitors. Then why are they here now? The air around them shimmered again. The black object pulsed with light. Then one of the beings pointed to the children. Grace stepped forward. "They want to take us." "No," Tom said. "You're free now. You don't need them." The being turned its head. Another pulse of light filled the sky. Suddenly, the children all gasped, their faces filled with emotion. Some cried, some smiled. "We saw it," Lucy whispered. "The place they come from. It's quiet, peaceful, but not home." Sam turned to Tom. "They offered us a choice." Tom nodded. "Then it's yours to make." The children looked at each other. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Sam stepped forward. "We choose to stay. We have a life here now. We want to grow. We want to feel." The visitors stood still. Then, as gently as they had come, they turned and walked back toward the glowing object. The black shape lifted into the air and faded into the sky. The wind returned. The ground was still. The stars came out from behind the clouds. Tom stood in silence with the children. No one spoke for a long time. Then Grace smiled. "I think I'm hungry." Lucy laughed softly. "That's the first time I've heard you say that." They walked back toward the mansion. The village lights twinkled in the distance. Tom looked back at the sky. It was empty now, but he knew something important had happened. The children were no longer part of the past. They had chosen the future. Weeks passed quietly in Hollow Creek. The village started to notice the children walking through the streets again. The same children they had once feared. Now they looked different. Their faces had more color. Their steps were no longer silent. They talked. They smiled. They helped at the bakery and played near the old school. Grace helped plant flowers in the chapel garden. Sam fixed broken wooden steps for an old man. Lucy sat in the library and read stories to younger children. Even Noah, who had once been the quietest, was seen drawing pictures of the night sky. Tom watched all of this with calm pride. The Ellington children were not just surviving anymore. They were living, but deep inside the old mansion, something was not right. One morning, the walls in the east wing cracked. A mirror in the hallway shattered without reason. Doors opened on their own, then slammed shut with force. Lucy felt the change first. She was walking upstairs when she heard voices. Not whispers, but full voices, calling names that did not belong to the children. That night, Sam had a dream. He saw the house filled with shadows, not people, not ghosts, shapes. He stood in the center while the floor broke beneath him. The mansion screamed with a sound like wind through broken glass. He woke up shaking. For the first time in years, he felt true fear. Tom noticed it the next day. Grace seemed tired. Sam was quieter. The air around the mansion felt heavier again. He searched through Mr. Ellington's journal but found no answers. Then, behind a loose brick in the cellar, Tom found something new. It was a letter, folded, and sealed with red wax. It had no name, just a single word on the front. Debt. Tom opened it carefully. The letter was written in the same hand as the journal. Mr. Ellington's words were clear. He had made an agreement, not just to take the gift, but to protect the balance. For every child saved, something had to remain locked away. Something beneath the house. Something that wanted out. As long as the children stayed the same, the seal held strong. But now that the cycle was broken, the seal was breaking too. Tom ran upstairs and told the children, "There's something under the house. Something Ellington kept locked. But now it's waking up." The children listened in silence. Sam clenched his fists. "This is our fault. We wanted to live. We chose this." "No," Tom said. "You didn't break anything. You fixed what was wrong. This thing was never meant to stay hidden forever, but we must face it. Lucy looked pale. What if it wants to take us? Back? Grace stood up. Then we fight. Even if we're just children, we're not empty anymore. They gathered flashlights and candles. Tom led them to the cellar. The light bulbs above flickered as they went deeper. The stone walls were damp. The air felt thick. Tom found a second door behind the shelves. It was covered with markings made from chalk and metal. A symbol sat at the center, shaped like an eye with a line through it. The children stood close as Tom pushed the door open. Beyond it was a dark chamber. A large circle was carved into the floor. In the center of the circle was a hole, a deep, round pit with no bottom in sight. Cold air rushed from it. The candles flickered and nearly went out. Then came the sound. Not a scream, not a voice. A vibration that rattled bones and shook the walls. The shadows in the corners twisted and formed faces that moved without speaking. The house above shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the wind picked up and howled through the trees. Tom stepped forward, holding the journal. He read from one of the pages. It was not a spell, but a message. A promise made long ago. "We thank you for the gift," he said aloud. "We return what was not ours. We do not keep what was borrowed." The shadows stopped moving. The air changed. The vibrations slowed. Sam walked to Tom's side. "We are not yours anymore. We belong to time again." Lucy and Grace joined them. Then Noah. One by one, the children stood around the circle. The pit began to close, not with stone or earth, but with light. A soft white glow rose from the edges and met at the center. The noise stopped. The walls calmed. The mansion stood still. The children breathed in deeply. Their faces relaxed. The dark air was gone. Tom looked at them. "It's over." Sam nodded. "The debt is paid." They walked out of the cellar together. Behind them, the door closed on its own. The markings faded. Upstairs, the mansion felt warm again. The wind had stopped. The windows let in golden light from the afternoon sun. That evening, the children sat in the garden. They drank warm tea and watched the sky turn orange. For the first time, they talked about the future. Grace wanted to become a teacher. Lucy said she would grow flowers. Sam wanted to build houses. Noah didn't speak much, but he smiled more than before. Tom sat beside them, feeling a quiet joy. The house had changed. The children had changed. And now, whatever had been buried beneath them was finally gone. The morning sun warmed Hollow Creek. The village looked peaceful, but for Tom and the Ellington children, this day marked a new chapter. The old mansion, once a place of silence and mystery, now held a gentle light inside. The house no longer seemed heavy or dark. It breathed with life. Tom watched as Sam, Lucy, Grace, and the others walked through the village square. They were different now. The weight of endless years no longer rested on their shoulders. Their faces glowed with hope. Their steps were light, as if the years ahead were full of promise. Children from the village gathered around them. The Ellington children no longer seemed strange or distant. Instead, they smiled and laughed with others, sharing stories and dreams. The village had accepted them. At the bakery, Grace helped the baker prepare fresh bread. Her hands moved carefully, learning the art of kneading dough. She laughed as flour dusted her face, her eyes sparkling with joy. Lucy sat by the library window, reading aloud to a group of young children. Her voice was soft but clear, bringing stories to life. The children listened, wide-eyed and smiling. Sam worked with the carpenter, learning to build wooden benches and fix fences. He was strong and focused, his mind sharp with new ideas. Noah, once quiet and shy, now drew pictures of the stars and forests. His sketches filled with color and life, telling stories without words. Tom smiled as he watched them all. The children had become part of the village, no longer trapped by the past. They had found a family here. That evening, as the sun set, the group gathered in the garden behind the mansion. The air was warm and still. Flowers bloomed, and the trees swayed gently. Tom sat on a wooden bench, looking at the children. "You have all been through so much," he said, "but now you have a chance to live freely, to grow, learn, and make your own paths." Sam nodded. "We want that. We want to live fully, with all the feelings and changes that come." Lucy added, "We want to help others who feel lost or forgotten." Grace smiled. "This place will always be our home, but we will find new homes too." Noah looked up at the stars beginning to shine. "We have a future." Tom's heart was full. The Ellingtons did something incredible. They gave you a chance. Now it is your turn to give back. The children sat quietly, thinking. Suddenly a soft wind passed through the garden. The leaves rustled like a gentle song. It was as if the world was welcoming their new lives. Tom stood. There is one thing left to do. He walked to the old mansion and opened the front door. Inside, he found the faded portrait of Mr. and Mrs. Ellington. Their faces were still blurry but kind. He smiled softly. "This house remembers," Tom said. "It will keep your story safe." He turned and joined the children. Together they walked down the path toward the village. From that day on, the Ellington children lived as part of Hollow Creek. They grew older, learned new things, and shared their gifts. The mystery of the past became a story of hope. The village changed, too. People came from far and wide to hear the tale of the children who never grew older and the family who loved them. Tom continued his work, writing their story so it would never be forgotten. A story of courage, love, and the power of choice. And in the heart of Hollow Creek, the mansion stood quietly, a symbol of the past and a promise for the future.